Oh hey, it's Wes. Happy New Year. And since it's 2021, that means it's time for the 2021 Studio Tour.
Wes Perry exposed.
Don't say that, it's not that dramatic. So let's get into it. So since last time, ironically, I posted my last studio tour just before I moved to a new place. Voila, this is the new place, as you're probably familiar with it at this point. And so this is my studio. It might be apparent that I am in a house still, not some industrial site. YouTube is a very small part of my income. I'm still largely a photographer and a musician, and so this is a secondary thing. So what this space is a studio space. Now the problem with that is, as soon as we moved in here, COVID started, and it's pretty complicated, if not impossible, to use a home studio space. As nice as it might be, as accessible as it might be, as you'll find out very soon, in the era of COVID. So, let's get started with our tour and see what we can find out. We're going to go through the space itself, the equipment that I use, my workflow, and how and why I do what I do. So, there's going to be links in the description about the stuff that we talk about here. You can't buy one of these cats, but you can buy a lot of the stuff that we're using. All right, to start out, we've got our A cam right here. That is the Sony A9. And again, because I'm primarily a photographer, these cameras have to do double duty, and they're primarily photographers' cameras. I can't afford to integrate an A7S III into my workflow because most of my money comes from photography. And so here we have the primary setup, the A9 with the Sony Zeiss 35-1.4. I've said in the past that I'm a little bit tired of the Sony Zeiss 35-1.4, but that's mostly just for photography. For videography, I find it still a fantastic lens. The autofocus is incredibly reliable. It has a very lovely, poppy, smooth fall off. But for photography, it's just not sharp enough. It does not meet modern standards. And if you look really close, that bokeh can get kind of weird, kind of onion ringy. But again, for videography, not so apparent. It's great. And if we turn around up here, we've got our B cam. And that is the A7 III. And we have the 16-35 G Master. That lens also, again, does double duty. It was primarily purchased as a real estate photography lens. But it's great for videography, the autofocus is great, the focal length is very versatile. This one is generally at 2.8, whereas this one here is generally at 1.8, 1.6, depending on how close I'm sitting to the camera. Now, for monitoring, I used to use a huge monitor. For years I used a huge monitor, but the problem with that is, again, this is not a dedicated space. And so I went back to using small on-camera monitors. This one we're using right here is the Dayview or DesView P5. It's just a small monitor. And then on top of that, we have the Timbrecod DC80. This one here, I like it because it's incredibly lightweight, super cheap, but cheapness has its advantages. Being very plasticky, it hardly adds any weight to the camera. Unfortunately, my tiny battery died earlier today, so we're using a big chunky battery, so it's not as light as it used to be. And then the Timbrecod, I love it because it's so straightforward. There's no battery externally. I can just take it and go charge it. We'll talk about charging in a second here. So for lighting, you can see right here, we have the Godox FV150, which I use a lot. I also use the SL150 Mark II a lot. I love those lights. Compact, convenient, easy to use. And one advantage of this studio space, let's crank this exposure down a bit here, is that there is a huge window here. And using that window is very convenient. So I can do natural light portraiture with my background back here. With the light coming in from the side from the window, we can angle a little bit. That creates a beautiful look. Obviously, I use flash as well. You know I use flash a lot. But the advantage of this diffusion that I have over the window here, it's a, I think, 30% permissible fabric. So if we look closer here, you can kind of see through the fabric, but kind of not. And so it diffuses wonderfully, creates a nice soft glow that I can use for lots of things. But since it's nice bright white, I can just shine a light on it. I don't have to set up a softbox for video. So that's my key light. Moving on over to the side here. we have what is usually the SL150 but I have that packed for a video shoot for later. Right now it's the ML60 with the Light Dome Mini 2. Now the reason I'm using that particular setup is because I like to have the light focused here, not spill too much. And the ML60 is bright enough for a backlight. I find for key light, not quite. And then way in the back here, we have the Pavotube light tubes. You can make them any color you want. Little expression. Apparently, if you're being a YouTuber, you have to have a light stick in the background or you're not legit. I don't know, Dave Lee. I don't make the rules. We have the backdrop here. I get a lot of questions about this backdrop. This is just a super cheap Kate backdrop from Amazon. Super easy to get. If you look really close, it looks very low quality. Get a little further away, looks great, especially when it's slightly out of focus. The end goal is to actually have a big backdrop roller back there. This wall here is actually 15 feet tall, which is super convenient. But since this isn't being used as a photography studio very much, that's being put on hold for now, so I just have this cheap travel backdrop kit that I have for like photo booths and stuff up right now. Then over here, we've got the mantelpiece, we've got some wedding photo albums, got a couple lenses that I'm not currently using right now. We've got the Weebill S stabilizer that I use for some stuff. It's a propane fireplace, I know, super interesting. This is where I stack some tripods. This is Maggie. Hey Maggie. Which brings us to the cabinets. So these are just Ikea cabinets. Now they are reasonably expensive Ikea cabinets. They're tall cabinets designed for kitchen use. And because I'm a YouTuber and a photographer, I've got a lot of extra stuff hanging around, and I like to keep it organized. So if we look in here, we have lots of boxes, but everything is labeled. We go a little further down here. Got some more labeled boxes. We have a 12-year-old Windows laptop in case I need to upgrade some Godox firmware. Got some more boxes up here. Oh boy. We've got the long stuff in this cabinet. Do not open that door, it will explode. So there's some more light stands and stuff in there. A little more cabinet space here, some more stuff. And then we get down to the more interesting stuff down at the bottom here. This is my charging assembly. I used to have a nice magnetic system, but now we're kind of down to something a little simpler. Now, number one, I do not recommend charging things in an enclosed space. That is important. Whenever I'm charging, this cabinet door stays open. We have some Godox chargers. I've got some Rode stuff charging here. I have my favorite charger right here, the ISDT. I can do 2 FW50s. It can do 2 FZ100s. It can do the RX 100 batteries. And it's powered by USB-C, Quick Charge 3.0. So yeah, I can charge a whole bunch of stuff all at once here. And another thing that I recommend is if you're in a room that is charging batteries, make sure that there is a smoke detector in that room. Very important. And this is also where I keep some of my batteries. We got the 8600 Pro battery. We've got my favorite battery bank at present. This is the Aukey. It is a wireless charger as well as USB-C and Quick Charge 3.0, so it does all the things. One thing I don't like about those Rode wireless Go's, they get a lot of flack for some reason, but I'm a big fan of them. I found them to be super reliable. But they're really annoying to charge. You gotta use 2 USB-C, and they take forever to charge. And so you gotta leave them dangling for a long time. I have 2 sets of them, so that's 4 USB-C for pretty much an entire day to get those charged up. Super annoying to me. And here we have the desk. So at the desk, we have a 2020 iMac. I just sold my old one and replaced it. I have some lens caps. Whenever I'm filming, the lens caps go on the side of the desk here so I don't lose them. Got the Spyder Pro holsters for when I go on a photo shoot. Mask, of course. We have a lightning charger for phone/iPad. When I'm editing, the iPad goes there as a second screen. And we have a USB-C cable. This is not for charging. This is plugged into the computer. It's a 12-foot USB-C cable that I use for tethering. So whenever I'm shooting, it's plugged into my A7 III because the A9's USB-B is too slow. USB-C tethering, the A7 III is fantastically fast though. Shoots out to the computer, gets the job done so I can tether, they can see their pictures coming up on the screen here. Currently testing these Freewell glow filters. So got our mist filters, that's all the rage now. Got some headphones, Bluetooth speaker, actually it's AirPlay. Got Baby Groot, always waiting to be used. Tictacs necessary. We have our USB HDMI dongle, which is super useful. This thing was $30 Canadian, probably $20 American, and I just plugged that into my A9 or A7 III, and gives you great 1080p HD video. You can adjust your color settings inside the camera so that you can get that just right. We've got my nuts right there. Don't want to be editing without your nuts. Got the Logitech MX Master 2, which is great, except that it has a USB-B port on the front, micro B. That's super annoying. As do my headphones though, so there is a charging wire right here under my desk with the USB-B, micro B, so that I can charge either of those when I need to. And there's this wire under my desk, which is the audio jack going to my iMac, so I don't have to fish around behind it every single time I go to use it. Maggie and Veronica. Okay, now I said this is in my house. As you can see from here, this is my house. So if we turn around here, when you come into the house, there's a sign I can put on my door. You are in my studio. So this whole space right here is the studio space. There's another living room in this house, and that's the reason why we chose it, so that we can use this room just as a studio space, and one that you don't have to walk through the whole house to get to, which is very nice for both customer service and your own sanity and sanitation. There you have it. This is the Wes Perry Photography studio space and the gear that I use. Apparently I aimed this at the cat and not at me.